The lights blazed across the CNN studio as Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders straightened her navy blazer, exuding the calm confidence of someone who thought she had already won. She wasn't just prepared, she was certain. Certain that tonight, she would dismantle a rising Democrat with nothing more than a few sound bites and some well-rehearsed outrage. Across the stage sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the 43-year-old representative from Texas, known for her fierce convictions, sharp intellect, and unapologetic presence. Sanders had dismissed her as an easy target. But what unfolded over the next 20 minutes would completely rewrite that narrative and leave Sanders questioning everything she thought she knew about political dominance. This wasn't just another cable news clash. It was a masterclass in political warfare. And the seasoned governor never saw it coming. Before we dive into the fireworks, hit that like button if you're ready for a breakdown of one of the most devastating debate takedowns in recent memory. And make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you never miss these pivotal moments changing the shape of American politics. Let's rewind to how it all began. Inside the CNN studio, Anderson Cooper reviewed his notes as cameras zoomed into place. The topic? Education policy, a seemingly safe political zone until tonight. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, former Trump White House press secretary and current Arkansas governor, had requested this matchup. She saw Crockett as just another progressive upstart, a product of identity politics who delivered firebrand speeches but had no real achievements to her name. Sanders, bolstered by rising approval ratings and a string of recent state-level legislative wins, believed she could embarrass Crockett with ease. Her team had prepped extensively, but their research was superficial. They underestimated Crockett's courtroom-honed discipline, her deep legislative understanding, and most importantly, her strategic patience. Jasmine Crockett, calm and composed, reviewed her notes one last time. A former civil rights attorney with a long history of fighting for underserved communities, Crockett had built a career on winning unwinnable cases and turning dismissiveness into fuel. And when CNN extended the invitation, Crockett didn't hesitate. She studied the moderator, studied Sanders, studied every bill Arkansas had passed in the last 18 months. Sanders, meanwhile, had studied headlines. What made this moment so much bigger than a debate was what each woman represented. Sanders embodied the Trump-era Republican establishment, tough-talking, anti-woke, and battle-tested in the White House briefing room. Crockett represented the ascendant wing of the Democratic Party, diverse, unfiltered, and uninterested in political niceties. This was about more than education. It was about the future of both parties and the direction America was heading. The topic, education, was more than timely. Sanders had recently signed bills banning diversity programs and restricting discussions of race and history in Arkansas classrooms. Crockett had vocally opposed such measures at the federal level. The battle lines were drawn. Cooper kicked off the debate with a simple prompt. What is your vision for America's education future? Sanders jumped in immediately. Her tone was sharp, her gaze fixed on Crockett. What we're seeing from Congresswoman Crockett and her progressive allies, she began, is a complete disconnect from what American families want. While parents in Arkansas are worried about reading and math, she's busy pushing woke agendas that don't belong in schools. Sanders painted Crockett as an elite ideologue, someone more interested in cable news applause than classroom outcomes. She leaned into her experience as a mother and governor, portraying herself as the adult in the room. I've governed. I've implemented policy. I've listened to parents. What has Congresswoman Crockett done? Other than tweet and lecture? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Sanders kept pressing. The truth is, people like her are the reason our kids are falling behind. They care more about indoctrinating children than educating them. She leaned back, satisfied. Her opening assault was done, but then camera pans to Crockett. No panic. No flinch, just focus. Crockett took a breath. then delivered a verbal counterstrike so precise it felt less like a response and more like a verdict. "Well, Anderson," she began with calm steel in her voice, "I appreciate Governor Sanders giving us such a perfect example of what's wrong with the conversation around education today. Before I respond to her attacks, let's address the facts she left out." Then, she turned fully to Sanders. "Governor Sanders, under your leadership, Arkansas ranks 48th in education quality, second highest child poverty rate in the country. Over 200 teachers have resigned this year because of underfunding. That's not my opinion. That's your record." A beat of silence. Crockett was just getting started. "You say I haven't done anything. I've litigated education equity cases across Texas. I've fought to open AP programs in neglected districts. I've restructured discriminatory funding models that your party defends." Then came the folder. Crockett pulled out House Bill 1228. "Here's the bill you signed last month," she said, holding it up. "Section 3 prohibits teachers from discussing how historical events impact today's communities. Tell us, Governor, how does silencing history help students become better thinkers?" Sanders visibly stiffened. "And that's not all," Crockett continued. "The bill also lets parents challenge any material they find divisive. But there's no legal definition for what that means. As a fellow lawyer, you know vague language is legislative malpractice. So either you signed this knowing it would create chaos, or you didn't read it." Sanders blinked, fumbled. "Well, that's not what the bill says." "I just quoted it," Crockett snapped back, holding up the page again. "If I'm wrong, please, Governor, tell us what it actually means. Explain to the parents watching how this helps their children." The trap had snapped shut. Sanders was caught on camera, unable to explain her own legislation, and Crockett wasn't done. "There's one more thing," she said, pulling another paper from her folder. "This is your Department of Education's grant application, filed March of this year for $12 million in federal education funds." Sanders went pale. "This grant is from the Educational Equity Enhancement Act. You know, the one I co-authored in Congress? The very legislation you just dismissed as progressive nonsense? Your state is applying for funding from a law I wrote." The studio fell silent. "But it gets better," Crockett continued, savoring the moment. "The grant specifically cites historical inequities in education as justification. So, while you ban teachers from talking about history, you apply for federal funds that require you to talk about it." The contradiction was staggering and undeniable. "Governor," Crockett said, delivering the final blow, "you said I just give speeches, but it's my work, my legislation, that your state is relying on to educate its kids. So maybe the next time you want to attack a Democrat, make sure you're not cashing checks from their ideas." Anderson Cooper tried to steer the conversation back. "Governor Sanders, how do you respond to the Congresswoman's point?" But the damage was done. Sanders mumbled something about federal funds and parental rights, but the authority had drained from her voice. She wasn't in control anymore. Crockett, sensing the power shift, leaned in one last time. "You said I don't want parents involved. Can you name one bill I've supported that blocks parent involvement? Just one?" Sanders said nothing, because she couldn't. And that silence, broadcast live across the nation, said more than any soundbite ever could. The question was a trap, and Sanders walked right into it. "You support the Democratic agenda that prioritizes union interests over parental choice," she declared, relying on worn-out talking points. It was the vague, hollow claim Crockett had been waiting for. "That's not an answer to my question, Governor Sanders," Crockett replied sharply. "I asked for a specific example, and you gave me a campaign slogan. So let me clarify. I've co-sponsored legislation that funds parent engagement programs. I've supported bills requiring schools to provide regular progress updates to families. I've pushed for expanded after-school options that help working parents support their kids' learning. Which of these do you think prevents parental involvement in education?" There was no answer. Sanders had nothing. Crockett had torn through her attack line by line, exposing it as baseless rhetoric, disconnected from policy and driven purely by political optics. The tide had turned so dramatically that even the moderator, Cooper, looked stunned. What began as a confident performance by Sanders had turned into a systematic dissection of her credibility on education. And Crockett wasn't done. "Governor Sanders," she continued, her voice steady but firm. "You questioned my record and implied I'm just another politician full of empty words. That says more about your political style than mine, and it helps explain why Arkansas continues to lag behind in education." The pause that followed let her words land like a hammer. Then she delivered her closing strike. Real leadership means doing the hard work, understanding issues, building bipartisan solutions, and taking responsibility. You came here tonight to deliver pre-written attacks, not policy insight. Governance isn't built on assumptions, Governor Sanders. It's built on facts. While you've been chasing culture war headlines, I've been writing legislation that helps children learn. While you've been signing bills that confuse educators and parents, I've been building coalitions across the aisle. Desperation leaked into Sanders's voice as she fired back. "Congresswoman Crockett, quote legislation all you want, but your party wants to fundamentally change American education in ways parents reject." But it rang hollow. The audience heard it, Cooper heard it, and Crockett heard it. Her final response was delivered with poised devastation. "Governor, the only thing I want to transform is the outcome for kids denied the education they deserve. If your version of American values means trapping children in failing schools, silencing teachers, and choosing politics over problem solving, then yes, I absolutely want to change that." The silence in the room was deafening. Sanders slumped, debate strategy obliterated. Crockett, calm and composed, had dismantled every line of attack. Cooper moved to close the segment, but the political damage had already been done. Within minutes, clips of Crockett's strongest moments went viral. Hashtags like "Taunting Crockett Schools Sanders" trended nationwide. Her brutal takedowns and precision comebacks were looped endlessly on TikTok and Twitter. The most shared moment? Crockett holding up Arkansas's federal grant application and asking Sanders to explain why her administration was accepting federal aid while banning related historical discussions. The look on Sanders's face as she realized the contradiction was immortalized in memes within hours. Even conservative outlets struggled to spin it. Fox News aired only the first 5 minutes of the debate in their recap, conveniently skipping Crockett's complete dismantling of Sanders's policy claims. But internal voices admitted defeat. A GOP strategist went viral for saying, "This is what happens when you prep for a fight and your opponent preps for war." MSNBC ran wall-to-wall coverage, calling it a debate masterclass. Democratic operatives started circulating Crockett's clips in fundraising emails, and it worked. Donations poured in. Her inbox overflowed with speaking invitations. State and national Democratic leaders began referencing her performance as a gold standard for media strategy. 3 Republican governors canceled scheduled debates against House Democrats within 48 hours. Behind closed doors, panic spread through GOP circles. The Republican Governors Association quietly circulated a 15-page memo titled "Lessons from Arkansas." It was brutal. The memo cited 3 key failures. First, Sanders's team hadn't researched Crockett's legislative record, missing her role in bills Arkansas relied on. Second, they hadn't reviewed Arkansas's own federal paperwork. Third, they coached Sanders to attack, not to defend. Meanwhile, Democrats moved quickly to institutionalize Crockett's strategy. The DCCC produced a training document titled "The Crockett Method." It broke down the debate into teachable tactics. Anticipate talking. Points, document contradictions, wait until your opponent overcommits, then strike with receipts. Academia jumped in too. Harvard's Kennedy School invited both participants for a breakdown seminar. Sanders declined. Crockett accepted. Georgetown ran an entire course on the debate. Professors hailed it as a prime example of the new political landscape, one where facts matter again. International scholars noticed too. At the London School of Economics, analysts praised the debate for exposing how traditional status is being replaced by demonstrable competence. The debate revealed that charisma no longer masks ignorance in the age of digital transparency. Back home, the fallout for Sanders grew. Her PAC donations dropped 40% that month. Major donors in Arkansas started pulling back. Her national prospects dimmed as questions mounted about her readiness for primetime policy discussions. Even local Arkansas papers, once friendly, published scathing editorials asking if Sanders understood her own policies. By contrast, Crockett's stock skyrocketed. Her fundraising shattered records. She received donations from all 50 states. Contributors included suburban independents, moderate Republicans, and first-time Democratic donors. The reasons cited? She came with facts. Legislative consequences followed too. Republican lawmakers across the country ordered reviews of their education policies. Florida, Texas, and Georgia governors requested audits to ensure their bills didn't contradict federal funding rules. Several education bills were quietly withdrawn. Democrats, emboldened by Crockett's model, launched an opposition research unit to dig into Republican contradictions. Their first target, Tennessee, where they found similar hypocrisy, leading to an embarrassing public hearing. On a personal level, the debate shook Sanders. She began refusing live interviews. Her team adopted a strict new vetting process for all public appearances. Crockett, on the other hand, became more visible, frequently appearing on conservative platforms, challenging hosts, and showcasing her ability to stay calm under pressure. The Democratic leadership quickly took notice. Crockett was invited into high-level strategy meetings, praised by figures like Nancy Pelosi, and featured prominently in midterm fundraising efforts. Her rise wasn't just about going viral, it was about changing the rules of engagement. Journalists adapted too. Debate coverage began shifting from surface-level commentary to substance. More outlets hired real-time fact-checkers. Producers stopped inviting guests who couldn't explain policy. Politicians were now expected to do their homework or risk being Crocketted. Campaign advisors nationwide took note. The days of coasting on charisma are over. Preparation wins, knowledge wins. And in a world where one clip can define a career, no one wants to be the next politician caught flat-footed. The Sanders-Crockett debate didn't just go viral, it rewrote the political playbook.